Hello, everybody. I'm Denny Carmen with Den's Oils. On stage, we have an amazing artist, a longtime member of River Ridge Association of Fine Arts and past president, Connie Janney. And I'm going to give it to you.
Thanks, Denny. It's really an honor to be here and to be able to talk about art to whoever hears what I have to say. And I usually have no problem saying quite a lot. But so as far as I am concerned, just talking about an introduction of who I am and how I got started in the arts. Like most people, started very young. I was probably in high school and hung out at the art room with all the other weirdos. And that's what I thought my life was going to be, about art. I thought it back then, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to a small independent art school and had some amazing teachers that were real artists. They were artists before they were teachers. And so they came to the teaching of art in such a different way than when you go to a school and you experience people who are taught to teach art. So there's one of the differences is that they teach you, these people show you how to teach from the inside out, not from the outside, never reaching in. So I suppose that experience, I know that experience is made me who I am today. So I did take classes, mostly in painting, but I have worked in every medium, most mediums. I did oils to begin with, started on acrylics as soon as that was available, so this was in the 60s, and then moved on to different mediums all throughout my career. I've done some sculpture, large life-size sculptures in plaster, and I've done smaller ones cast in bronze. So I have a series of bronze ones. I was going to bring one and I forgot. I was a jewelry designer and a goldsmith for many years. And I was an expert at carving waxes for the lost wax process of jewelry making. So that was a great experience of doing miniature things, did small things, rings and pendants. These are small things. And I just couldn't wait to make something big. I just wanted, so my first big thing I ended up making, it was a 7-foot tall sculpture. Had to build an armature. It was in a class at the community college in California where I lived. And my son's girlfriend was the model. I created a tree trunk, 7 feet tall, and I took plaster casts of her arms, her torso, and her legs, and I applied them to the tree, and it was a woman emerging from the tree. Of course, it disintegrated after time because who has a place for a 7-foot sculpture? But the idea of being able to do something large was fabulous. I just enjoyed that so much. So I did a few more using plaster that way. For me, art has always been healing. And I think being creative is one of the most healing things people can do in their lives. That, healing usually doesn't have to do with adding up numbers in a row. It has to do with your creative ability, whether it's in the visual arts or whether it's in musical arts or in words with poetry or stories or even writing letters. These are self-expression, and they teach you something about who you are, and you share them with other people. So it has always, I've sort of suffered from, I wouldn't say, maybe it is suffering, from depression. Let's say I've had depression in my life. And doing art has been, once you get to the point where you can actually get up off the couch and you can start doing something. Once you start being creative, you get out of that. It moves you through it. You learn what you end up creating something that takes you to another place. And it's all part of you. So I teach right now, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but so many of my kids in my classes are suffering from depression. I can't believe how many of them say they've been diagnosed with depression. It's like, is this a whole school of depressed people? But anyway, it is sort of an epidemic. It's something that people have. They don't know how to heal themselves. They don't know how to get through their feelings and their emotions, because we haven't learned in our culture and society how to accept ourselves for who we are, and that we all have emotions, and not all of us can control them at all times. Usually not. But I've had many spiritual experiences in doing art. And at an earlier time, you would call them mystical experiences. As I've grown older and look back on those experiences, and I look at what I do now and how my whole philosophy of art and how I progress in my own art, they were the times I got myself, my ego, out of the way and allowed the creative energy that exists everywhere to work through me. And then at the time, it freaked me out because I didn't know where these things were coming from. And, you know, there weren't too many people around who could tell you, well, it's okay, you're going to be, it's not a freak out thing. But, you know, as I've grown through life, I have had this continually, and it is through doing art. It is through allowing yourself to get out of the way enough to allow the creative energy to flow through you and create what you do. Everything I do is like that. Very few things start with too much of a preconceived idea. Things start from having a creative spark. For instance, the sunflowers. I had these sunflowers that I was inspired to draw sunflowers, so I had a bunch of drawings. And then I had all these papers I created, and I thought, I'm going to put them on a canvas. But I allow it to happen while I'm working on it. I don't see a finished product until it's done. So that happens in many cases. In this big painting, I'm very fascinated by the universe and the pictures from the Hubble telescope. I don't see how anyone can look at what the astrophysicists have discovered and not be so in awe of the universe we are a part of. That it's so amazing to me. So I was inspired by these pictures, and we know that the pictures are composites, that the colors that we're seeing in these pictures have been added, because we don't really know what the real colors are of these gases that form these nebulas that give us this incredible thing to look at. But whoever does that does a fabulous job, and it certainly is inspiring. Usually in starting something like this particular painting, which I call Eye into the Universe, which is sort of based on a nebula called the Eye of God. You know, nebulas are just gases left over from a supernova, but there's all the gases and minerals that are out there explode into shapes and colors that are so amazing and so incredibly large, you know, larger than our solar system out in space. So those pictures are always an inspiration to me, and I love what they represent is the infinite of all, you know, everything that is. It's all infinite. Life is infinite. Everything is infinite. We're not finite beings. So we're having a human experience. Some of us handle it better than others. Like I said, most of my drawings and paintings start with ideas. I'm very drawn to all nature. So animals, birds and fish there's billions of different kinds of birds and fish. Billions of them. It's just amazing how every one is so different and so inspiringly beautiful. Usually when, this particular painting over here is supposed to be a trumpeter swan. Well, trumpeter swans are white. And I don't do white. It's just, I do color. So the trumpeter swan didn't get entered in the trumpeter swan contest because it's pinks and stuff. But that was the inspiration for that bird, was the trumpeter swan. I just finished a couple that were based on the common loon. Such a weird word, common. They're extraordinary birds. Extraordinary. They have the best outfits around. I want a coat just like that. So I just did a couple of pictures of loons. Because we live in an area where loons exist up in the northern lakes around our area. So I'm inspired by nature and the universe. Oh, excuse me. Whatever way that takes it, but it has never been my desire to duplicate nature. I guess my mission is to express nature through me. My wonder of nature comes through. It doesn't have to be somebody else's. It doesn't have to look like what other people think it looks like. It has to just be, this is my wonderment of what things are. And I was talking to Nicholas just before, the evolution of a person, the evolution of art. I don't think if artists aren't evolving while they're being artists, they stagnate. And they're doing the same thing over and over. And why? Because they fixed their mind that this is what's good. They haven't allowed themselves to grow. And my feeling is that we must all keep growing, keep learning, keep evolving. It is a part of what we are as creative beings. So yes, my work has evolved tremendously since I first started making art a priority in my life about 10, 11 years ago when I first moved to Spokane. Although art has always been a part of my life, not the visual arts specifically. I've played with it on and off, but like I said, I had to earn a living. Fortunately, I was able to earn sort of a living as a jeweler and jewelry designer. But I got to be creative, and I got to let that creative spirit flow through me, and those were the best pieces I did, were the ones that just happened, just came to be. They were cool. As I have a house full of paintings, all artists do probably, we're in this incredible marketplace, Spokane. It's incredible. The artists here are incredible. The talent here is incredible. We have extraordinary artists with capital letters, capital A artists, like Stan Miller, Joe Cronenberg, oh my God, Terry Lee. We're talking about people, Nicholas Saranka. He's one of my faves. But we have incredible talent here. We don't have a marketplace where people buy our art. Hopefully that will change and I think it is. I think it's evolving. I think it's part of that. Those of us who have seen it, I've only seen it for 10 years. There's people who have been here a lot longer. They've seen it change and grow, and we have many more marketplaces for art here. So we can hope, and for most of us, I think, the reason we sell art, yes, we'd love to make a living with our art. But most of the people I know are hoping to sell enough so they can replenish their supplies and they could make more. Because we cannot not create. We all have that innate thing that we must do things that are creative, even if it is painting a box that looks good in our living room. But we have to create. So lately, I have been doing some new work, and it's in monoprints. And I'll talk a little bit about that because it has to do with teaching. That's another thing I found. I never wanted to be a regular teacher. I grew up with teachers. My father was a teacher. My mother worked in the schools. I didn't want to work for the school system. I'm not a system person. But I am fortunate enough to teach at a small high school here in Spokane that allows artists, people from the community, to teach their electives. They don't have to be art teachers. They have to be artists. And when this opportunity came to me and to my good friend Jenna, we took this and we ran with it. And so we've been doing it for 2 years, almost 2 years now. It has been the most enjoyable thing I have been able to do. So I'm able to make an impact, share creativity. I almost don't like to call it teaching because, yes, I'm trying to tell them about composition and color and, here's some different mediums. They work better if you use it this way than if you use it that way. Most kids don't listen to you, and they'll do it any way they want anyhow. But that's okay because they are going to learn how it works. But this is a terrific experience of allowing kids to be creative. Because in our class, I know my granddaughter took an art class in her freshman year, and the art class was, I'm going to teach these kids about ionic columns and the different kind of columns the Romans and the Greeks had. So they have to learn to draw, and they have to make it exactly like this. If you want an A, you make it exactly like this. Well, there are times in our lives in learning the basics of art where we need to learn, this is how you draw something. This is 1 point perspective. Here's a V. There's a vanishing point. Everything on here has to go along those lines. And then you'll see what that does. You'll see a street that goes into the... So there are basic things that people want to learn if you want to draw that way. If you want to learn these basics, basic color theory. But what's almost more important before you learn those things, to me, this is my philosophy, is to learn to be creative, to let yourself go, to not have a fixed mindset, to let things grow with you. I'm teaching kids that are between 15 and 18, and I can't tell you how many of those kids already have been taught that they don't do it right. That there's a right way and a wrong way, and they've done it wrong. So they haven't learned to create. They haven't learned to allow themselves to create. The adults that come to my workshops were turned off to art by art teachers who told them they weren't doing it right. So they stopped having fun. Well, in my workshop sense, I don't teach people just how to paint a face or here's how you paint a building. they come and they learn to do monoprints, which is the most freeing thing you can learn to do. And when you see how simple it is, and you see what joy it gives people, you just want to keep doing it over and over and over. Because everyone, I was even told that the class I did on Saturday, we were too loud. Because I only had, there were 6 people in the workshop, including myself and my mom, and they said we were being too loud because people would make something, they would go, wow, is that cool? They were so thrilled with what they did. And it was simple, simple things. Simple monoprints are as simple as putting some blobs of paint on a piece of paper, putting another piece of paper on top of it, and rubbing it and pulling it up. That's how simple it is. And you end up, I don't know whether the camera can pick this up, you end up with stuff like the outside of this notebook that I made. You end up with these shapes that look almost like a finished flower painting. Add a couple stems and people thought you worked all day to get those textures and that shape and everything, but you didn't. So that's the reason I'm doing these now, and so I've discovered this new thing called a jelly plate. And it's actually been around for a long time, but I've just been using it for the last year. So this is another part of monoprinting. You get really only one print, and you'll get more prints, but none of them will be exactly the same. You're not trying to reproduce you're not trying to make 10 of the exact same thing. Everything comes out different. So, and you do layers and layers and do different things, and I cut them out and I make collages because I'm a mixed media artist, and that's what I like to do. I like to do collage. And all of these paintings are done with a collage technique. This is just mostly mixed media. There aren't papers involved. All the rest have papers in them that I have created and applied to the canvas along with paint, along with other mediums to arrive at texture and that sort of thing. So I do, most of my work is a collage work. I like collage because it's very freeing. There's no right or wrong. You just try to get stuff down on the paper that expresses something you want to say. And that's what that is. And it's instantly gratifying. It doesn't take weeks and weeks to finish a piece. You can do it in an hour or 2. Sometimes things take longer, but most things go very quickly, and it's a lot of fun. Where are we time-wise? So there's probably more things I should talk about. Okay. I don't know, do you think some of these things will show up in the camera? Okay, I'm going to show a technique that I've been using that, I just learned this by watching stuff on Pinterest. I watched some videos. So there's this technique, it's called dendritic printing. It's 2 pieces of glass. You use just acrylic paint. You want the thicker paint because that's what gives you the textures. You use a couple of colors. You paint it on the glass, kind of thick. Put another piece of glass on top of it. Rub it so that it all sticks together. Then you pull up the first piece of glass, and you've got these amazing textures on both these pieces of glass. And you put a piece of paper on top, and you very lightly touch it, and it prints onto the paper. So I'm going to show you 2 of them. So this is one done. If you tried to paint this, it would be very, very difficult. But here is this amazing kind of jungle that was just created by just pulling one print off glass. Now, you can add stuff to this. You could paint over it. You could use watercolors or acrylics. You can add branches. You could add birds. You could do whatever you wanted, but you've got your basis of what you have right there just by pulling this up. And I'll tell you that this is the most fun people have. When they see what happens, they are in awe of themselves when they come up. This is another one that was done using the same technique, but there were 2 prints. And this is my favorite one. I sprayed water on the glass, which was not a part of anything I read. I just use water in my work. So I sprayed water on it and took a print, and I got some of the same textures from the paint, plus I got a watercolor effect that created something quite unique and quite beautiful to me. I love this piece especially. These are what you do to have fun creating, to see the creation just comes. You don't have to put a lot of work or effort into it. It can just come to you when you get your ego out of the way and allow it to happen. So for me, this is teaching people or allowing people the space to do this kind of work and decide what it becomes to them and where they take it in their lives, whatever they decide to do with it. They'll probably go on from here because they will have felt successful. So now they're going to feel, oh, I can try something else. I can try something else because that was cool. Why not try something else? It's only paper and a little paint. So I found so many people take themselves so seriously about these things when it could just not have to be quite so serious. It can be just have fun. And it's been my experience in my life that whenever I've thought of things as the outcome is I'm doing this painting, it's going to be in a show, and I'm going to sell it for thousands of dollars. That's what I want to do. If I start out with that kind of attitude, nothing happens. It'll be the worst thing I ever tried to do. I'll never make anything of it. It just doesn't work. So for me, it's always start somewhere. Allow it to come through you. Allow it to tell you what it wants to do. You can be successful, and you don't have to think that it has to sell for anything. I mean, I'd love people. I got a call, and it was on my phone, and I hadn't looked at my messages for about 2 weeks. I don't know why. But I didn't look, and I had paintings hanging up at a coffee house here in Spokane, and a man called me and told me, he says, I can't afford to buy any of your paintings, but I wanted you to know I was at this coffee house. I spent a long time looking at all your work. It's fabulous. It's so wonderful. If I had the money, I'd buy it in a second, but I just wanted you to know how much it meant to me to see it. And you know what? That's probably better than if he bought it, you know. That is like, wow, that's so awesome. So many of us don't even do that to people. You know, we'll see something we think is so cool, and we won't let them know how we think it's so cool. But that was one of the best things I've experienced in the last month or so. So I don't know what else I have to say. Oh, I have one quote that I read today, and I read it to my class. 2 minutes. Okay, this won't take 2 minutes. So I didn't write down who quoted this, but blessed are the weird people, poets, misfits, writers, mystics, painters, troubadours, for they teach us to see the world through different eyes. And that's what we're doing as artists. We're teaching people to see the world through different eyes. Okay?